Welcome to the Voices That Propel Us, stories of justice, action, and community, a space where justice meets action and community voices rise. Each episode, we bring you stories from the front lines, changemakers, disruptors, and everyday heroes who are building a more just, equitable, and liberated world. This is more than a podcast. It's a call to listen, learn, and move together. You were just listening to music from the incredibly talented Stephen Kong. You can find him on Spotify and Bandcamp. Today we have with us Martin Henson. Martin is the founder and executive director of BMEN, a nonprofit focused on building real support systems for Black men, mentally, emotionally, and culturally. He's not just talking theory, he's in the trenches helping Black men navigate the weight of racism, mental health struggles, masculinity, and everything that gets pushed aside in mainstream conversations. With a background in mental health counseling, project management, and years of community organizing under his belt, Martin brings a rare mix of honesty and intellectual clarity. He's the kind of person who can break down systems, speak on healing, and challenge the way we think about manhood, race, and power, all without sounding like a professor talking at you. Whether it's therapy, conversation, or community support, or just what Black men need to survive and grow, Martin brings a sharp, grounded, relatable voice to the mic. Okay, well, hello. I'm really excited and really grateful that you're here. I think you do really amazing work. And I think, I'm just excited to see where this conversation will go because I think it's important conversations that we do need to have. But how are you doing this morning?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here. It's a good day.
Yeah.
It was snowing here yesterday, but it stopped.
Oh,
So
snow. Okay. No, that's
yeah.
cool. No, over in Southern California, actually it got really strange with the weather. It was 80 degrees this past 2 days. And like, whoa, it's December. So yeah, like I was saying, I'd love to talk more about your work. So just to start off, you've moved from on the ground Black Lives Matter activism to founding
Mhm.
BMEN and now writing. So when you look back, what threads or values have remained consistent or constant throughout your journey?
I've always believed that the work that I do is intended to change the world and give as much impact as possible
Yeah.
throughout the different formations and activism and collectives, as well as my background in mental health.
Hmm.
The strand that's coming through is helping people
Yeah.
and leadership and responsibility, things that I've learned from the way I grew up and with my family. We've done a lot of community work. I grew up in a church. So volunteer services versus things you just do on a Saturday or Sunday,
Uh-huh.
there's not really much difference for me. So
Yeah.
it felt like it was woven into the way I was supposed to be. So in every endeavor I take up, I feel like I'm responsible to put out the thing that I have the vision, the experience, or the skills to do. And if I don't do it, it's not going to be done. So that's a big thread. And of course,
Yeah.
supporting Black community and the work with Black men and a wide variety of things that overlap.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. It seems like you had that just desire, from a young age, just giving back and everything. And, when do you think it was for you to make that connection between like service and, helping people or serving people and like how it connects to like larger, like social movement issues or like larger activism? Like, did you make that connection even when you were young?
I've always been told that my mother told me, you're supposed to be a leader. Don't follow everybody.
Yeah.
Be the first and be your own person.
Um,
I think there's so many different things that overlap in my world, messages that I've gotten that sunk in. Part of it was that I'm supposed to do, it's a quote by MLK that says that basically, let me paraphrase this, is that what you give now is you giving your rent, your rent that's due for the world. I'm saying it wrong. I'm butchering it.
no,
I'm getting
I
it
get what you're
terribly
saying. I
wrong.
love
But
that.
what he said was the gist
Yeah.
of it is that the things that you give are your responsibility because you're here and you owe the world that for being
Yeah.
alive, for existing. For me, I just have always thought that I was supposed to do something that mattered
Yeah.
because I could see things and that other people didn't see. And I could speak,
Hmm.
particularly in the Black community. If you can talk and articulate, uh, coming from the church, that's important. That's
Yeah.
a big feature of being respected and someone who can advocate. So that being a part of what was identified in me early on by people around me, as well as my investment in Black history, meant
Hmm.
that I knew I'm supposed to engage in activism and advocacy. And I just didn't know when it was supposed to be. But I know that in every moment the opportunity came, I needed to step into
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing. And what would you say that the moment was, or the accumulation of moments that made you realize Black men needed a dedicated support system by and for them?
It's a few things. I can't
Yeah.
point to just one thing. I can
Okay.
say where it began for me personally,
Hmm.
individually. And if I had to pull out the strands and call out this major purpose theme in my life, it probably started from this
Hmm.
or part of it. So when I was younger, my dad was killed when I was about 13, 14. And it was devastating in all the ways you can imagine. From there, in addition to the other things that were injected into me, virtue of my community, my family, I was really invested in keeping people from dying.
Okay.
I didn't have the words for it then.
Yeah.
As I got older, my investment in Black men and Black community,
Uh-huh.
that insight into death, having seen it, having somebody taken from you, that overlapped with police brutality, that
Hmm.
overlapped with seeing people navigate suicide and addiction. To
Right.
me, these are people being taken. And
Yeah.
so the bridge between my life story and getting into Black Lives Matter and a variety of other things I've done was
Hmm.
that I'm not going to allow other people to be taken
Yeah.
anymore.
Right.
And so that made me feel like I was suited for some of the really hard and dark points of activism because I've seen that.
Right.
I know what that's like. And I don't think that's unique to me. I think there's a lot of stories and connections with people that have been around me who they've been through something and
Right.
they can stand in that sort of fire because
Yeah.
it's not new to them. And I know it sounds dark and maybe a sort of a
No.
morbid connection, but
Yeah.
that's that was a part of it.
Yeah. No, but it's real. And just what you bring up, I think the work that you do can be really heavy. Just just the issues and, like yeah, just the violence and, trauma and just completely devastating. But, what helps you keep the work more lighter, like helps you to keep going, like, those pieces of joy that really helps you to keep you moving.
Yeah, I had to find that because you if you're looking at pain all the time,
Yeah.
it'll seep into you with like sponges.
Hmm.
And for me to be able to do it well, I had to find other points to look at. One one time was I didn't really realize I need to do this. I was very much I'm a soldier for for the cause.
That's
That
cool.
was my approach and willing to do anything that came up or any approach, anything I needed to learn to be more effective at advocacy, I was willing to do.
Right.
But in, I want to say 2017, there were two men that died back to back. It was Alden Sterling. This was high profile police deaths. And so you were
Yeah.
seeing it across all of your social media
Right.
and conversations. Alden Sterling was one of them. And I can't remember the name of the other guy. They came back to back. And my what I would do is watch the news every morning.
Hmm.
I would have all my tabs and links open.
Okay.
And I was just be and because I was doing activism at the time, I felt like I had to be ready to explain
Yeah.
and to know all of the pieces because people would come to you and they want people from Black Lives Matter, the movement,
Right.
to articulate what they're supposed to feel and how they're supposed to orient.
Yeah.
But after that, it was so much that was happening every day.
Yeah.
From the time that Mike Brown was killed into maybe 2020 is probably going to die down, but it was every day,
Okay.
probably every hour, on social media being exposed to some sort of vicarious trauma through like death. Like
Hmm.
you either would see the images, hear the audio,
Hmm.
hear the news reels on. It was just all the time,
Yeah.
and I was like, all right, I can't survive.
Yeah.
This is, this is. I'm not going to be able to make it if this is just what my mind has to absorb. From there, I started to think about what Black men needed
Hmm.
to get by, and I had to start to think about what I needed to be able to exist. So at the time, my social media was all protest stuff. I
Okay.
felt like, no, they're gonna think I'm playing if I
Yeah.
share anything that's not that. But
Yeah.
now I have such a different thing. So personally, I describe what I do, and then I'll talk about the other ways that I do it. So personally, like even on my social medias now, I'll
Yeah.
repost jokes and just silly stuff.
That's
In addition
awesome.
to
Yeah, you need
what
that.
I do, the activism and stuff, you'll see that periodically.
Yeah.
But I need to be able to connect with other parts of how we exist, which is kindness and
Yeah.
fun and connection. So with Black men and the stuff that we do with the BMEN Foundation, that meant that when we started to build our support spaces,
Mm.
we're just talking about, in the beginning, I just talked about, I had a theme or topic that I would introduce and ask people
Okay.
what they thought about it. And then I moved toward, what are you processing?
Yeah.
That's one of our big questions that we do in that space. We ask people what they're processing, and people bring all types of things, and we live in sort of moments of levity, moments of joy, and just talk about the things that we like and things that we connect with, what
Hmm.
gets us through, and we hear each other's stories. So that shift in thinking about what I needed, as well
Hmm.
as my head is in research. I look at research every day, like
Right.
obsessively.
That's
Like
cool.
it's
No, that's awesome.
but thinking about the what's missing in the narrative of us as people
Yeah.
is joy and happiness and success, because there's such a drive to see very hegemonic or dominating positions of Black men in the world.
Yeah.
So to be able to find ways, in whether in my organization or my personal life, to advance Black men as whole, full beings capable
Okay.
of love,
Okay.
that's the thing that's how I adjusted to it.
Yeah. No, thank you for bringing that up. And you also brought up an important point that I was thinking about. So I was just wondering, how is it for you as like a person of color to like hold that, like be the representation? Because I think that the dominant culture does hold, we have a lot of responsibility. So for example, I'll give an example of what I was thinking about. But so I went to UC Berkeley and I was a part of this group, and there was this vice chancellor of equity inclusion. And then he looked at me, he's like, what are the most pressing issues of the Asian American community or Asian American Pacific Islander community? And, I'm just this one person, like, well, and I know, like, I can let you know my experience and what I
Mhm,
think, but
mhm,
I don't know. I just feel like there's so much pressure on people of color for us to represent and for us to teach, for us to do this. Where, as with white allyship, I want to like show people like, they got to educate themselves too and not put so
mhm,
much pressure, on people of color. So have you
mhm,
experienced that as well? Like having to be
mhm.
that voice, having to be that representation?
Yeah, yeah, quite a lot. And
Yeah.
sometimes it depends on where you are and what their politic of progressive social change is.
Right.
So in many liberal spaces, there's a sort of multiculturalism
Hmm.
that they advance, where they want to invite other cultures and people to exist alongside them, but
Hmm.
it's within their representation of personhood and
Okay.
existence. So it's still dominated by sort of a white
Yeah.
overview of what it means to be human and what it means to
Yeah.
have culture. So you would have folks come in and they don't really know how to view Black people through the lens of Black experience. They know how to
Hmm.
view us through the lens of their experience. So they would come in, and I would have two minds about it. They would come in and ask you, well, what was happening with the Black community, or we need a Black representative
Yeah.
for something.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of pressure. And it didn't make sense for everybody to take on that role. It was one that I didn't mind having.
Okay.
It doesn't mean it was fair. It just meant that I
Yeah.
knew that someone was going to take that space.
Right.
And I knew relative to my personal sense of integrity, it was probably better
Hmm.
that in certain cases that it would probably be me.
Yeah.
Because it was, it can get weird.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it would be hard. It would be hard because they're looking for, not only are they asking you, they're also looking for a particular type of answer.
Okay.
So when you give them an answer that is not one that affirms their sense of guilt
Hmm.
or how they exist in the American system, uh, then you get a really strange dynamic. So what I moved toward
Uh-huh.
was allyship. There's a variety of names. We
Yeah.
were during the time we were really big on categories and types, and
Okay.
typologies of this is
Okay.
ally. Are you ally or are you a radical? Are you in it with me? It just for me, it started to get silly after a while. I just wanted someone to feel, and you'll hear this theme when I talk, to be caught up in the same type of humanity that I'm caught up in,
Uh-huh.
and where you can acknowledge me as fully present, deserving
Yeah.
existence and protection and support in the same way that other communities have gotten it.
Yeah.
So maybe someone who is a comrade in the cause, and
Uh-huh.
that they're caught up in the fight with me against these systems of oppression, white
Right.
supremacy, or colonialism, racism,
Yeah.
whichever lens they're coming from. That was helpful to me because now they're responsible for their own behavior. They're
Yeah.
not waiting for me to direct them because they need to develop their own orientation towards justice. So
Right.
you can come to me and ask me, what do you think about police brutality? What do you think about incarceration? What do you think about health and education disparities in Black community? But
Hmm.
I'm interested in, what do you think about it?
Right.
And
Right.
let's see if we can align
Yeah.
toward a goal that allows me to bring something and you to bring something too, so that we can attack this thing together.
Yeah. No, thank you for bringing that up. And just going back to what you said earlier, I totally agree what you were saying with like multiculturalism, because I think like this power structure can promote kind of like a melting pot, but like to a certain extent, because I think there's a lot of, at least in my own experience with activism, like I feel like there's a lot of divide and conquer between
Hmm.
different communities of color. And I feel like that's really strategic. So, for example, at least in California, I don't know in other places, but there's like has been history of like a lot of Black and Asian tension, with the alley riots and other examples. But one thing that I learned, because I studied Asian American studies when I was at UC Berkeley, and I learned that there was actually a lot of Black and Asian solidarity during the civil rights movement. Because so my family too, my family was in the Japanese American internment camps during World War II. And I think that really sparked a lot of activism. And during that movement, they drew a lot of influence from the Black Power movement. And but the thing is, like, I never saw that in a textbook until I was in college, specifically for Asian Americans, like Asian American studies. So I just feel like they don't promote like solidarity. So I don't know. I just feel like maybe this promotion of multiculturalism might be more performative than, we want you to like come together to, help to dismantle this, white power structure. And yeah, so I've just had conversations with people of all different kind of races, and it's like, no, we don't hate white people. It's just that systemic oppression that it's, harmful for people of color, though.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree that that's the thing that happens for me now in how I start to advance all of these different causes
Hmm.
coming from a sort of what many would see as like a radical foundation,
Yeah.
is that I'm looking for shared goals.
Right. Right.
And part of the thing that happens with liberalism, or the way the system can impress itself on marginalized communities or communities of color, is
Hmm.
demand a universalist approach.
I
You
love
have
that.
to have something that works for everybody.
Yeah.
And the for everybody doesn't quite work to my advantage or the advantage of my community.
Hmm.
So I think that we have lost a sense of from whatever lens you look at it, of coalition building,
Right.
where we're working with people who have a goal that's in alignment with ours. And we're
Hmm.
not trying to transform the entirety of what their approach is or how they see themselves, but
Uh-huh.
how do you connect with us as it relates to this thing? And one of the
Right.
things that was big about the Black Power movement is that the advancements made by the American efforts to
Hmm.
address the systemic oppression were like it was global, like everyone, every
Right.
cause was taking lessons from
Right.
us. But and you're right, like we don't learn about these sorts of
Yeah.
solidarity that these groups, maybe the Puerto Rican
Hmm.
liberation approach and the gay liberation approach, we're all
Yeah.
talking with Black Power or people within the Black Power movement and acknowledging each other
Yeah.
and saying all oppressed people. Like that's a
Right.
big moment in history, but we've forgotten that. And I want to bring back threads of of having people think about what ways are we alike and what ways can we change the way the system operates for us
Right.
into one that's more just and more fair.
Yeah. No, I love that. So, just going back to your work, how did your background in mental health counseling shape the way you approach movement work and community organizing today? Because I think mental health is like incredibly important to like movement work.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for asking me this question because I don't think
Okay.
anybody's ever asked me this, and
Really?
I
Okay.
I
Okay.
wish someone would ask me that. At the time, I'm not a therapist now, but at the time I was doing it. I went to school for counseling, and when I got into movement spaces in this particular iteration of movement that happened, I traced the Black Lives Matter movement from 2014 to 2021,
Okay.
and in that time, there was a lot of focus on distinction and
Hmm.
what makes people different.
Okay.
And that being an advancing cause for leadership or an advancing cause for struggle. So the ideas like the most marginalized and lived
Hmm.
experience were really heavy at that time.
Okay.
What I noticed though, when we would get into spaces and organize, that often brought people who were still navigating forms of trauma
Hmm.
that they felt should deserve high levels of visibility, uh, then we can actually deal within an organizing space.
Okay.
So the people were still in the middle of a lot of hurts and a lot of
Right.
traumas, and the culture was trying to advance safety in organizing at the same time
Hmm.
as fighting against white supremacy or systemic oppression. And those
Hmm.
two things then they didn't mesh well
Right.
because organizing itself is not a safe thing to do.
Hmm.
Community organizing is not
Yeah.
a emotionally healthy endeavor to
Yeah.
engage in. Is a thing that we give towards the causes we care about
Right.
and at cost. It just is that's going to happen. But I thought that some of that uh, lended to our inability to create healthy spaces because we were
Okay.
over promising and under delivering. We're saying
Right.
that this space can be healthy and it can feel good and we can all acknowledge the needs of everyone present, but it's not that type of space.
Uh-huh.
And there's spaces that are adjacent and supportive towards community organizing. They can do that, but within the space, you end up having the purity test and
Yeah.
um, what do they call it? Conflict uh, courts, to say, for lack of a better word, where now we have to stop what we're doing because these two people have issues with each other,
Hmm.
and if we don't resolve these now, then their mental health is being threatened by the presence of this person who caused them harm. It became
Right.
something else. So with I call it my therapist eyes. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, there's some things happening here, and the sort of boundaries that we have through organizations
Yeah.
were being disregarded because we wanted to say, well, everybody should be coming, and we had this popular education approach.
Hmm.
Everybody can learn the skills necessary, all we need to do is remove the barriers. And that's just not true in that
Right.
way. But there's things that we learned from it. But I don't think that we were able to build healthy spaces because what we thought a good community organizing space was a bit faulty. So
Yeah.
that's how my mental health lens would. I would see people. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I think this might not be good for you to be here.
Okay.
But you couldn't say that at the time because we were still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, no, I think you bring up an important point too. And actually, that's a theme that comes up a lot on this podcast too. So, I would say a majority of my guests so far have been change makers, and we've been just having real and honest, raw conversations just around burnout, actually doing social change work, because I think it can be a lot like yeah, I remember when I first got into this work too, I did this internship and people were saying, you just gotta watch out because you could literally die from this work, like overwork yourself and get sick and everything. And yeah, just talking about like how can we make this work more sustainable, more life-giving, than life-draining, just because yeah, it's I think one thing to just show up at a protest or go volunteer for a day or something, than like, doing social justice, social change work as a career, like day to day, just going through. So yeah, just as I've talked, I've also just seen, yeah, just mental health being really important for the people doing the work as well. I think people that we're serving for sure have those mental health needs, but I think for the people doing the work too, I think that's incredibly, important work that you're doing. And I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, you saw some weird things come up, and
Yeah.
this is how I describe it. Like you have the birth of the online movement is not even the word, the transformation of society through blog-based
Yeah.
online forums, like
Right.
that was coming. You had fourth wave feminism, and then you had Black liberation struggles, like all converging
Hmm.
at the same time. And we were saying that these can all happen in the same way, but they all have different goals and they
Right.
all have different threats. And so now I'm moving into more of a strategic analysis and for project management stuff and
Hmm.
say like, well, what are the benefits of this approach? What are what's the outputs of doing things in this way? How are we
Okay.
checking against uh, the opportunities that are here versus the things that can get in our way? Like we have to really be vigorous in testing and
Yeah.
understanding that what we're doing works. So with you asked me how my mental health lens, I'm gonna tell you how my
Hmm.
mental health lens showed up, and I'm gonna tell you how the other lenses became more
Okay.
prominent.
Cool.
First thing was that you go to grad school for anything, you're gonna have to
Hmm.
do a lot of research.
Yeah.
So research was very important to me, and the question of how do we know that this works
Hmm.
was big to me. So with our sort of digital movements, they have a tendency to grow quickly and fail fast
Okay.
because you get a lot of charisma, you get a lot of people who show up, and we don't have systems to retain them.
Uh-huh.
We don't have systems to delineate skill, and we were in a position where we believed in horizontal movement structures, which
Okay.
at the time I was with. And now I'm like, oh, actually, you actually need really clear lines of
Right.
who has what role and how. And you can have flatter structures, but you
Hmm.
do need clear hierarchies because they'll begin to operate
Yeah.
uh, in hidden ways and kind of destroy what you're building up. So that eye for research was there, and knowing when people were advancing ideas. So we were very open. We was open for like
Okay.
experimentation and people be curious. And I was like, the threat of this sort of popular education model
Hmm.
and the anyone can be a leader approach was that there needed to be study and development in
Okay.
order to maximize that opportunity. So you got people who came in who in organizations that didn't have an orientation towards studying.
Okay.
And so you had a lot of momentum and a lot of errors happen early.
Uh-huh.
And because of the visibility of the digital platform, people didn't have to go through communities and earn trust.
Okay.
You show up, I don't know what it was like out there. You show up with 10,000 followers, 20,000 followers on whatever
Yeah.
platform, you're going to be given leverage. And
Okay.
digital value and in-person
Mm-hmm.
skill,
Mm-hmm.
they're not the same.
Yeah.
So that research orientation came up as I'm moving through and developing BMEN. While I was organizing, the same because they overlap for a bit. BMEN was
Okay.
started. I started thinking about it in 2017, 2018. 2018 is when it
Mm-hmm.
became a thing. While I was still doing Black Lives Matter, and by that time I had a wealth of experience with uh, Black Lives Matters, the organizational approaches, and
Okay.
what worked and what didn't. So I was watching certain things do well in the public eye,
Mm-hmm.
but really fail in an organizational standpoint,
Okay.
and having to navigate that. So I brought that knowledge into BMEN. And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
okay, here's how you think about organization. Here's how you get people together. It wasn't perfect, but it informed it.
Mm-hmm.
And then later, I moved into project management, where you only talk about projects, and you can do that across a variety of venues and structures and fields
Okay.
to move something from beginning to completion, whether you do that in phases or um, agile or more traditional. So all of these things started to formulate how I think about strategy, how I think about building programs, how
Okay.
I think about outreach, how I think about delineating skill and role. So I have I have a far more clear approach because at the time I was
Yeah.
just doing whatever I could do.
Yeah.
This needs to be done, cool. But I couldn't tell you, I
Right.
couldn't tell you how to break that down, that role or that project into a few different things. So all of that started to blend together, and it really helped me move forward and advance from doing all the groundwork into doing it more in systems and organizations.
Okay. No, I love that. So, can you please share, like, how does BMIN challenge or redefine the narrative around Black masculinity?
Oh man, you have great
Oh.
questions. Matter of fact, I
No, it's
want you
just
to
because I'm
sit.
curious. I'm curious about it too. Because,
Send
yeah,
me
it's
these
something.
questions, please. Then I'm
Yeah.
gonna write about it. It's
Okay.
just I feel seen right now.
Yeah. No, no. And you should. I think that's the thing. Because I think, especially, like, that's why I'm glad, because with the like phones and stuff, I feel like there's more accountability, because I feel like just throughout history, because I've even taken like film and race, and it just like these portrayals and just like, yeah, just I feel like we need more positive. So yeah, when I saw you like focusing on, supporting Black men, I was like, this is really cool. So yeah, that's why I love to just hear like, breaking that narrative. Like, what does your work play in that?
Yeah, so I appreciate you for that
Hmm.
again. So B-Man Foundation, organization that's here to create support spaces for Black men and
Yeah.
advocacy for issues that are specific to Black men.
Hmm.
So we do that through support groups. We do that every month, every second Sunday, in person and online, in person
Hmm.
in Boston, online, we do it remotely. And we'll do programs that are culturally relevant to the things that Black men are navigating
Okay.
and thinking about. So there's an overlap between things that men are dealing with as a whole and things that
Yeah.
Black men are doing as well. So in terms of our themes, we really focus on evidence-based approaches. We
Hmm.
focus on strength-based
Uh-huh.
connections. And that one is so big because there are many people will talk about Black men. And people talk about Black men all the time, but it's
Hmm.
often problematizing us or it's
Yeah.
corrective. So when I say that we're going to talk about Black men and the things that we go through from a strength-based approach.
Okay.
And so if we're talking about the needs of Black men, I'm not going to go out and say that Black men struggle with their mental health because they refuse to go to psychiatrists or to
Right.
doctors or social workers. I'm going to
Right.
talk about the systemic barriers that Black men have to navigate, as well as the protective factors that Black masculinity has afforded, since
Hmm.
we are not under the same
Yeah.
type of masculinity as white men. We weren't considered as men at all when
Yeah.
we first came here. Neither were the women considered women.
Hmm.
So when I go and frame things well from the position of how we're able to succeed in spite of
Yeah.
that, and always orient towards a strength-based approach to Black men, we can still address the things
Yeah.
that come up. I'll give you an example. So I'll give you two examples. One of
Uh-huh.
them was maybe this is 2015, 2016. I can't remember around the time. They were talking, Black men and trans women were a featured conversation topic. And part of it was that the conversation was that we need to stop Black men from killing trans women. That was a
Oh, wow.
thing back
Okay.
in that moment. It was a big conversation topic. And it was interesting to me
Uh-huh.
because the people that I saw that had a lot to say about it oftentimes didn't have relationships with either trans women or Black men.
Mhm.
But this is whether or not that was true or not, it's still a prevailing topic. And as a Black man in community that cares about the people in my community, I'm like, how can I think
Yeah.
about this thing? Because we do need to talk about intercommunal violence, but Black
Mhm.
men can't dominate the conversation on intercommunal violence because then we're
Okay.
moving the racial stereotype of Black men from a
Mhm.
race-based conversation to a gender-based conversation.
Mm.
So I was like, okay, let's see what's happening here. That's how my mind
Right.
was. But I think
Mhm.
there's legitimacy in talking about how to make sure people feel safe in the community. So what we did was I did a program called Bridging the Gap, pulled
Okay.
together straight Black men, trans women of color, and just talked about it and talked about how we live and how we exist and what's happening within our communities, how trans women are perceived and how Black men think about it.
Yeah.
Because yeah, whether it's Black trans women or uh, Black cis women, they're still in many cases dating Black men.
Mm.
So the fact that our community is not talking about that, I thought that was a good opportunity to talk about gender and what it means for Black
Yeah.
men, what it means for trans women of color, and many of them were Black trans women. And it was a great way to advance a solution towards a problem by destigmatizing
Okay.
both groups, destigmatizing trans women as a population that can't be engaged or that people want to keep in the
Mm.
closet or behind the door or bring up as some sort of virtue signal. And it was a way to destigmatize or to challenge the narrative of Black men being hyper-violent.
Right.
So do those two things at the same time. So that's the first example of what I'm talking about. The other one is that during, uh, interestingly enough, when Me Too came out, BMEN initially was an idea like a response to that. Like, what can
Okay.
Black men do in
Okay.
response to this? Over time, I started to examine. I was like, oh, this actually pairs us alongside violence in a way that might be a bit problematic by saying that
Right.
our entire existence is to keep Black men from hurting women. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So I
No,
was like,
that's
okay,
challenging though. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
But I was like, I still want to do something around it.
Right.
So B Men started to transform from an idea of just responding to that
Hmm.
to responding to Black men's needs and
Okay.
responses. Because what would happen is when Me Too came out, I'm having conversations with folks. Because the first thing
Okay.
that I noticed, I remember today, Facebook.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're on Facebook when the Me Too hashtag drops,
Okay.
and it was a time. It was
Yeah.
a moment. Because you see all these people saying "Me Too, Me Too." Me Too." I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
all right. And just to be clear for folks who maybe don't remember that may be listening,
Hmm.
the Me Too hashtag came from women saying Me Too in response to their having experiences of sexual violence
Right.
enacted upon it. Correct me if I'm wrong. If
No,
I'm
no, no,
missing
you've
something.
got that right. Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
And like for the folks who maybe the younger folks who wasn't on the internet then or wasn't on Facebook then. So your Facebook, I don't know what they was doing on Twitter. I don't know if I was on Twitter at the time,
Okay.
but Facebook, you got these notifications. You're on your page, you're scrolling, and you see the Me Too, just hashtag Me Too, and all these people you know.
Yeah.
And for me, it was like, oh,
Yeah.
wow. Now, it wasn't virtual counseling. There wasn't like my first awareness of the nature of sexual violence and what it does, because
Hmm.
I was just in the mix in a lot of other ways through my mental health career. But that moment, what made that stand out to me is I noticed no men said it. Yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
see any men say
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
I didn't say anything. No Me Too, no nothing. It was just,
Mhm.
and so I went to, and I was thinking about that, and I was talking to people in my community. I went to
Mhm.
go ask the men, like, man, like, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
And when I would ask the men about it, they didn't quite react in the same way that the Me Too was framed. And like, have you ever had an
Mhm.
experience? So it's like, they didn't really respond to that. But
Okay.
if the question was worded differently,
Uh-huh.
have you ever done something when you didn't want to, or
Mhm.
has somebody, and I
Yeah.
sort of realized, oh, all these guys are actually saying that just
Yeah.
regular men I'm coming across are saying that they have stories too.
Right.
And while I didn't want to create BMEN and be like, well, we're going to process men's stories of this, I didn't think it was for that. But
Mhm.
men need a place to process the stories, Black
Yeah.
men specifically. And
Yeah.
then so that became what BMEN is now. But that interest in solving that problem, addressing it, meant that me and a couple of people that I knew in community came together
Okay.
and created a workshop for men responding to sexual harm in their community, where we talk about these things and we
Mhm.
identify the situations or circumstances where either there was some inappropriate comment, for all the way from an inappropriate comment to uh, explicit sexual assault, where we identify a moment in front of other men where we process a way that something that happened and how we
Okay.
could have been better. Um,
Yeah.
so that's so there's like two ways that I'm like, all right, here's how we do the strength-based thing,
Right.
solve the problem, and without leaning into negative interpretations of Black men.
Yeah, no, I love that. And actually, I was wondering too, have you noticed like Black men having any like barriers or challenges to reaching out or getting the support or resources they need because of like that image of masculinity?
Yeah, I think the
Okay.
language of vulnerability that
Mm-hmm.
we use and talk about is very universalized.
Uh-huh.
And men don't talk or speak in that way, and they don't respond to the same prompts. So just like in
Yeah.
my example where I say, if I ask dudes, have you ever had an
Mm-hmm.
experience of sexual assault? Like, they gonna say no. Like,
Yeah.
in many
Yeah.
cases, if I frame it differently, have you ever had an experience with someone did something that you didn't like, or sexually, or pressured you, or forced you,
Mm-hmm.
then you get different answers. But also, virtue of masculinity, there's different levels of support that men will get. So if a man shares something that breaks the expectation that they're supposed to have, that we're
Uh-huh.
stoic and that we're responsible and protected for everyone else, a disclosure for a man is not going to be met with the same empathy that it might be met with for a woman.
Right.
Like, it might be met with, and this is from everybody in the community, where like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you need to get over it, or
Mm-hmm.
that's what a man's supposed to do. Just all these types of ideas, or you taking away from women's space. That was one
Yeah.
that was interesting that I didn't know to expect. So men have different barriers to emotional vulnerability that
Yeah.
women do. And I like the work that I do with men, whether it's with Black men or men as a whole, to talk about, here's how we create more avenues for men to process, but we don't have to do it in the same way that we do for with children, or we might do
Okay.
it with women. But men will find it useful,
Yeah.
so that's what I care about.
No, that's really wonderful. And yeah, I've just had a wonderful time just learning about all these different things that you've done. You've done a lot of work through the years. So yeah, with that, I was just wondering, has your understanding of justice evolved from like your years of early activism to where it is now? Has it
Yeah.
changed at all for you?
Yeah, I think that people are really invested in punishment. They're really
Oh, okay.
invested in punishment.
Okay.
And so what I saw is that there was an upswell of interest in addressing the prison industrial complex,
Mm-hmm.
virtue of the conversation about police brutality.
Uh-huh.
But what happened was, instead of arguing that people should be arrested if something goes wrong. And there was a lot of restorative justice and transformative justice approaches that came out.
Hmm.
Restorative justice is, just to clarify for people who may be listening, is an approach that believes in alternatives to punishment through
Yeah.
peacemaking that comes from indigenous teachings, indigenous Native American folks, but also extending to other indigenous approaches around the world. And so you do things to restore people back to community.
Hmm.
Transformative justice believes that the systems of whether it be health or incarceration or all of the systems can be complicit
Okay.
in the harm that occurs when things go wrong. So transformative justice is more encouraging towards community members to take up
Hmm.
skills to be able to solve problems. Heavy overlap with restorative justice, but they're a little bit different. But what I noticed is when we were talking about getting rid of the carceral system or challenging it, people would
Yeah.
just move toward ostracization instead.
Right.
So maybe I don't want you to go to jail, but I want you to be shamed and banned from community. So I
Hmm.
was like, oh, that so justice is like really impacted by
Yeah.
the prison that we keep in our mind, as well as the one that physically exists that we want to transport people to.
Yeah.
That and I think integrity and responsibility and leadership, it's not a lot of people that can do that. It's just not. And I think we thought this sort of, I mentioned this earlier, this leaderful position that we had.
Uh-huh.
Um, I don't believe in that in the way that I did before, because I think people have different roles, and
Hmm.
sometimes that means direct leadership, sometimes that means other things. And we have to be really clear on what we're doing and where we're going, because we're not naturally going to get there by
Hmm.
just trusting people's charisma toward the cause to lead us there. You need skills.
Yeah.
You need people who can develop. So those are the things that come to mind.
Yeah. No, thank you so much. And, just as we're wrapping up, how can listeners support your work and the mission of BMIN in sustainable and meaningful ways?
Yeah, you can check out bmenfoundation.org.
Okay.
And we're doing support groups every second Sunday. You can tell somebody about it and
Uh-huh.
have them come there. And if you want to partner or collaborate with us, you can send us a message and let us know. We would
Hmm.
love to be a part of it. We want to be engaged and invested in community issues that not only are happening to Black men, but impact Black men. So that includes a wide variety of things. So check out our
Yeah.
website and reach out to me if you have any questions. My email is martin@bmenfoundation.org.
Okay, cool. And then, just lastly, I was wondering what gives you hope right now? Like where, just in the work that you're doing, like, yeah, what gives you hope for the future and like where we're headed like in terms of when it comes to like, people working towards social justice and social change?
Hope is
Yeah.
hard.
Okay. Yeah.
It is very, very hard. I am feeling hopeful about people thinking of connecting with people within their communities. I think we're incredibly polarized right now.
Hmm.
And one of my gifts is that I'm able to see connection with folks who are very different from me. And I think people are coming out of the hyperpolarized space.
Mm.
And so I'm hopeful that society will be a little bit more gracious towards each other, so we can get past this moment that we're in right now.
Yeah, no, I love this so much. But thank you again for your time. I truly did have a wonderful time talking with you. And I think it's beautiful work that you're doing. And I wish you, much success as you're like keep moving forward. But yeah, I hope to stay connected with you and hope you have a good rest of your day.
All right, you too.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for being here and tuning in to Voices That Propel Us, stories of justice, action, and community. Your presence in this movement matters. If today's conversation moved you, share it, talk about it, and keep the work going. Together, we're not just imagining change, we're making it. Until next time, stay bold, stay grounded, and stay in the fight.
Every time I feel so mad and sad and bad, I say to myself,